Welcome in to the OBR Postgame show on the OBR streaming network. My name is Brad Ward. That is the always fantastic Pete Smith with me. The Browns are losers 24-6 in Cincinnati, week 16, dropping another one. We have things to discuss. DTR made his start today, and there was some bright spots and some down spots through the game, plus some things that I want to get Pete's opinion on. Just overarching thoughts on the Browns. As much to discuss. How we doing, Pete, after this one?
Bored, I guess.
Yeah.
The shortest version I can give: offense bad, defense good. I mean, that's the theme. DTR struggled, and it's a shame because they actually, some of that is partly because of the threat DTR's legs pose. But Jerome Ford does well. Obviously, has the big run. They can't cap it off, fumble it, and then that sort of starts off the course of events in another game where the Browns are within 2 scores almost the entire way and turn it over 2 times in the red zone, and their defense gives them all the opportunities to seize control. There's points in the game where you think they are going to take the momentum, and if you're a Bengals fan, you're sitting there going, "Oh God," and then they just don't. And so, on the one hand, if you are rooting for a draft pick, the Browns had the perfect game. They lose, and I don't think anybody got seriously injured. But to me, I felt like this game, outside of Jerome Ford and maybe David Njoku, although he doesn't really need to prove anything to me, I felt like this game was a waste. Defensively, there's a lot of good stuff going on, and it's a shame because the offense is so bad that you're missing out on it. But I feel really positive about the direction that is going to close out the season to sort of springboard them potentially into next season.
Yeah. Let's go with DTR to start this thing, kind of dig into his performance today. I agree. We were hoping for better than this, right? I read your article. I thought you summed it up pretty well, that the game seemed a little fast for him at times. He seemed uncomfortable. The best plays he made were with his legs, where he is rather crafty at times. He does look like he's going to get hurt every time he runs, though. It scares me. Yeah, I mean, the Browns drive right down the field. And Deontay Foreman, who hasn't been active in weeks, gets an opportunity to put one in the end zone and fumbles on the 1-yard line. I mean, this is stuff bad teams just do, right? And that's one of those things that it feels like right there, like bad teams do that. They can't put the ball in the end zone. A guy gets an opportunity, he fails to take advantage of it. DTR did not look anywhere. I was hoping he would look much better, I guess. I'm rather disappointed in his performance. He took multiple sacks. I mean, the offensive line didn't do him any favors, but this is the same thing that Winston was dealing with as well. I thought that you summed it up well by saying that the 2 interceptions going into the end zone are devastating when you're trying to get back into a game. But more than anything, it was boring. They were boring on offense, and you once again you were unable, as it was with Watson, to really continue the progress that we had started to see with the wide receiver core.
Yeah, so to me, I thought it felt like I was watching Deshaun Watson play again, except DTR's just got more juice in his legs than Deshaun did. So there was a little bit of an element of he could actually create with his legs. but he was, when the first read often wasn't there, he looked like he was dropping his eyes to look at the pass rush. And every so often when he got away from the pass rush and was able to sort of get some attack downhill, he got his eyes up. But like if he didn't just take the profit with his legs, he did what he did on that Njoku attempted interception where he just threw it into a window they had no business throwing into. Just a complete unforced error when he just could have taken it and run. But like to me, and my whole thing going into this was I wanted DTR to earn the right to play. And maybe he looks way better than practice than he did in the game. But what I saw was a guy who's getting charity reps. And I like DTR. I think he's an interesting prospect. I like the tools he has. I am not interested in the game is not dedicated to just making DTR better. Like that does not do the Browns any favors if just DTR gets a little bit better and not even bet like in a way that's really beneficial. Him running around is fine for creating yardage. It's not helping the development of him. And it's not helping the development of anyone else. So that sort of makes it pointless to me to run him back out there. And again, I'm not at practice. Maybe he looks a lot better there, but I can't have the entire team really offense, but team as a whole on grind to screeching halt to wait for DTR to try to play functional football. It's not helpful for anyone to me. I want to see the guys like Jerry Jeudy continue to progress. I want to see, obviously, Jamari Thrash is making rookie mistakes and doing some stuff that's not helping himself, but I'd like to see them get more opportunities to do things. So if I'm gonna mess around and I'm gonna make mistakes and I'm gonna turn over the football, I might as well do it with somebody who's gonna at least allow people to make plays and show their value, even if it becomes with the laws. I mean, if you're hoping for a draft pick, that's still your best scenario, but at least like it's one, entertaining to watch, and two, there's at least a benefit. Jerry Jeudy getting better is a benefit. Jamari Thrash getting better is a benefit. Them getting a firm grasp on what they want to do with Elijah Moore is a benefit. Jerome Ford catching passes, and he did that. I mean, that's the one, again, he's the one player who I thought really took advantage of the opportunities. But overall, it was just so much that felt like a waste. The first half was particularly brutal. They got nothing after that 66-yard run. So it just felt like they were sort of passing time. And the second half was slightly better, but that's when the more critical mistakes came into play. So it comes down to what's important to you. If it's winning, which I still think it should be, then DTR is not going to is based on what I saw today is not giving you that. If it's development, based on what I saw today, DTR is not giving you that either. So to me, I want to see him carried into the offseason program. I want to see him take a healthy offseason and develop and see what he can do based on that. But I don't need to see it on Sunday. I've seen enough to know that he's not where he needs to be. And maybe he will, I know Kevin Stefanski suggested he will be back out there if he's healthy. I don't know if he's going to change his mind or not. And maybe there's a world where he gets a whole lot better, but in a week against the Dolphins. But I don't think it's worth everybody else on the team just for that.
So you would go back to Jameis, or would you give Bailey Zappi a shot? What would you be doing here?
I would play Jameis if he's healthy. And they have Bailey Zappi in practice. They can see what he can do that I can't. But as an advocate of not just trying shit on the field, what I saw today was what I talk about, what I advocate specifically against. It looked like you were just trying shit on the field. And I think that undermines your overall message. And this is not me trying to say that this is me changing my mind on Kevin Stefanski or anything along those lines. They are 3-12. Like, it's largely irrelevant. But just from what I think is more beneficial to the overall team, I think going back to Jameis Winston make more sense. But that's on them to make that call. And Jameis Winston is already a known quantity. So I understand there's sort of the argument against him. But like, if you are trying to find a reason to be like hoping that Jameis Winston was going to re-enter the game somehow, this is the performance to get that feeling. Like, after the Chiefs game and some of the other stuff he's done, there was a sense from a lot of people, well, let's just put anyone else out there because they will at least give you something for the future or something along those lines. To me, I immediately just want to go, look, I'd like to see Jerry Jeudy get to play football and some of these other guys, and at least James can do that. And maybe Bailey Zappi can too. And if they feel he's able to do that, so be it. But again, I'm not interested in trotting out this for 2 more weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think like on one hand, yes, the offense as a whole functions at a higher level when Winston is in there, just period in general. And your wide receivers get some of that development that we're talking about, like what we've seen from Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore and the numbers that they've put up with him in there. And that is certainly valuable. We do know what he is. I think we know what DTR is for now. I'm not
right in this moment,
him, but for this moment, I'm fine with what he is. I thought it was worth giving him a start. Not charity, but to your point, it ended up feeling like that because he wasn't good enough. But the question then becomes: do you, at the interest of flying in the face of what you just said that you don't want to do, and just throw crap on the field, but is it worth, if Zappi looks decent in practice, are you just at this point trying to take swings on quarterbacks that maybe it clicks for him or maybe it looks good? I mean, this is a guy that beat us in a game. Bailey Zappi did, right? A couple of years ago in a spot start. So, I'm just saying, and maybe it's worthwhile to just throwing it out there to give him a shot, to see if it looks like maybe he has a chance to develop into something better.
Well, here again, if they have him take reps in practice and he looks the part and he looks like somebody who can confidently make the offense go and be effective and compete, then so be it. To me, unless they cut Zappi, if they put him on the, if they've got him and he goes to the offseason program, they've got him. So I understand sort of the curiosity there, but I don't care.
Just a swing.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't care. If I want him in the offseason program, I want him to take all those reps and get better and see if he's competing now. Because there's a world where, Bailey Zappi and DTR are competing for a roster spot next year. You know what I mean? So that is at least interesting, I suppose. But again, if Bailey Zappi can give them something great, the things I don't like about Bailey Zappi is he's got, I'll say, middling arm strength and some of those things. He's a dink and dunk guy. And
sure,
that's tough to operate right now with what the Browns are doing, and defenses are already inclined to play very close. But like I said, that's where having practice footage and being able to understand what he looks like in practice might be more interesting. But in general, it just comes off as feeling like you're just throwing stuff out there. But that is their call. And again, at least right now, Kevin Stefanski says they're going to roll with DTR again. So I don't know. Like I said, and if that's the case, then either Bailey Zappi has not gotten opportunities, or he has and hasn't looked even as good as DTR has, or something along those lines. Or they don't want to put him out there if he's. I don't offhand. I don't know if he's on the practice squad or the active roster. I think he's on the active roster. But if they were to try to put him on the practice squad, if he, they wouldn't want to necessarily put him in a position where somebody can scoop him up. So we'll see what they end up with. Like I said, this game felt like a waste, and maybe DTR will be better, but particularly the first half was just an absolute waste of time. Second half was slightly better, but still, it does me no good to see Jerry Jeudy, Jamari Thrash, Elijah Moore. Those guys just do nothing. I want to see guys that can give us, give the team, give themselves something to build off of heading into the offseason, which is going to be important enough on its own.
Yeah. I see some of you wanting to take the victory laps. Y'all wanted DTR and you got him, says Smallville. You want to take victory laps because we wanted to see, or I wanted to see DTR. I'll say that. That's fine. You can take a victory lap on me, and I'm willing to admit that he did not look good. The Browns' record is 3-12. Okay? I wanted to see what he had. I don't think that is a terrible thing to want to do. The Browns said they were going to make him earn it. They felt like he earned it. He did not look good. I never said that he was going to look good. I just wanted to take a look at him. If you want to take
my contention was I wanted him to earn reps. All I said was I wanted him to earn the spot, which, and based on what I saw, looks like it was charity. So
yeah, sure, that's fine. But I mean, taking a victory lap because you said that DTR sucked before and he proved that to you, that doesn't seem like a positive thing. I never said that he was going to be good. I just said he has only had 3 starts, and you don't make an evaluation on someone based off of 3 starts. You just don't do it. Anyways, I don't think he's done. I mean, you can't even make evaluation on what his ceiling will be based off of today. He's played 4 games in the NFL. It takes first rounders sometimes 2 or 3 years to get comfortable in the NFL. What are we talking about here? Anyways, you're watching the OBR post-game show with Pete Smith, and my name is Brad Ward. Hit like and subscribe. So the positive today was Jerome Ford again. He's kind of on a roll here, 11 for 92. 5 catches for 39 yards. Jerome Ford accounted for 131 of the team's 273 yards today, Pete.
Yeah, he was good. Big 66-yard run. He keeps having the thing with Jerome Ford is he has explosive plays. And I continue to believe that he's a valuable part of a rotation. If he's your second or third running back, depending on how it shakes out. So if Nick Chubb comes back healthy, and they draft somebody, which I would be very surprised if they didn't, and that's your 3-back set, I'd be really happy with that. You're seeing nothing from guys like Pierre Strong. You're seeing nothing from, obviously, not even Deontay Foreman hasn't done anything. It's Jerome Ford's been your best back this year, and if Nick Chubb can return and be healthy and be good next year, and have him and somebody else, then I feel good about that. And I'm not in a hurry to draft somebody early in the draft at running back. I'm talking day 3, but I think the draft's deep enough at that position that you're going to get a whole lot of things. And what I want to keep seeing from Jerome Ford is get more guys that can block for him. I don't think he's ever going to be a true feature back, but I love what he offers, both the kick return, both as a running back and occasionally as a receiver. And I think the better the offense gets, you sort of forget about a guy like Jerome Ford, and then all of a sudden he's taking off and running down the field and making a big play, which is what he had today. I was a little bummed that he didn't get over 100 yards rushing, but he had 131 total yards, just like almost half of the team's total yardage. I mean, like I said, he was the bright spot. Njoku had 66 receiving yards, good, given what they were working with. But yeah, I mean, Jerome Ford is obviously the big guy on offense. But there are the numbers it's very easy and not necessarily unfair to say the Browns are just complete dumpster fire in this moment. But what I would say is the guys who are like taking the big leaps forward are young players for the most part. Like Jerome Ford's the one on offense in this game. But like in Cedric Tillman earlier in the year, and hopefully he'll be back for these last 2 games. But it's mostly on defense. And you're still getting Myles Garrett, who's playing unbelievable. You're still getting Denzel Ward, who's playing really well. Dalvin Tomlinson, some of those guys are playing really, really well. But the guys who are stepping up have been here either 2 years or less. It's all young guys, and they're coming up big in big ways. And that's what gives me a lot of hope for what this team can be next year. Like my sort of thesis right now is that it's unfortunately too little too late. And they have to keep it up. Like they've got the Dolphins next week at home. That's another interesting test from an offensive standpoint in terms of what they can throw at the Browns with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, that stuff, and a bunch of speedy running backs. But the Browns really stopped the Bengals well in the second half of this on defense. Once they got going on defense, they really took advantage. They were able to cause a turnover of their own, and like the second half, they shut them down until they got that late touchdown when last gasp type thing where it was just sort of over. But that side of the ball just really impressive. In the first half, that was part of the slog of the first half. They were not playing terribly well, and some of that was just Joe Burrow was just killing it, and Chase Brown was really good to start the game. He had 45 yards on 2 carries the first drive, and then he only finished with like 91 in the game. But those 2 big runs really opened things up strong for them, and Burrow was able to capitalize, and he was just phenomenal. Jamar Chase, a phenomenal football player. But once the Browns got their footing, they really took control, and they got after Burrow. They were able to cause a lot of pressure, and that stuff was really good. And like I said, it's too little too late. But if you're trying to look for where does this team go from here, it's the Browns defense is playing more like we saw in 2023 in this last stretch, and they're doing it without a bunch of their key players. So it's been so long at this point that you sort of forget that it's very easy to forget some of these guys exist. But like the Browns defense is crushing it without JOK. JOK was, I believe, on his way to an all-pro season. And you take that out of the lineup, and now you have all these young guys on the defensive line stepping up in a big, big, big way. You still have Myles Garrett, and that front seven looks really good. I really like the linebacker room. I don't know what Jordan Hicks is going to do as relative to what he wants, but JOK, Mohamed Diabate, I hope they re-sign Devin Bush as that depth guy, because I think he's really made a strong case for himself recently. And then if you can get Jordan Hicks to stay, because he's just like, I like it here, I want to stay, I would keep them. And that's 4 linebackers. And all of a sudden, between the young defensive linemen who are stepping up and the linebackers, you're in a really good spot. At those spots, you've got the DBs. Still, Denzel Ward is very good. Grant Delpit is still very good. I still think Juan Thornhill is a good player, calf issues aside. And then it's just figuring out the rest of those corners and things. And the other, Ronnie Hickman's a perfectly fine role player. I think there's a world where, I think the Browns are, at least from where we sit right now, I hope add an elite playmaker on defense, Abdul Carter. And then they just finish like honing up the secondary with what would hopefully be a much better pass rush. Because my issue with the Browns right now is I love Isaiah McGuire, and I hope he takes a big next step forward. But he's not a very accomplished pass rusher right now. He will get off blocks, and he's able to cause pressure. Had the big sack in this game to force fumble. But what I would say is between him and Mike Hall, who had his best game, and Juwan Briggs, who played well and has been playing well in small instances, is if they add an Abdul Carter type player to give them a true dynamic edge threat opposite of Myles Garrett, and Isaiah McGuire was to take another step forward as a pass rusher, and Mike Hall is to continue to develop, then you have a terrifying defense that can sort of reset things. And yes, they will still have to do a whole lot of things on offense. But if they were to get that part right, and they were to get back to being closer to that 2023 defense, which I think they could be in that scenario, that would make life a whole lot easier. Because just looking at the Bengals game and the Chiefs game, if they were just a little bit better on offense, they could win both those games and not have 9 combined turnovers and just some of the other crap that I think they can get cleaned up.
Yeah, let's talk about the defense. So the Myles Garrett gets his sack to go over 100 sacks, the youngest player ever to do so. I want to talk more about Myles in a second here with you. But you mentioned the good on defense today. Devin Bush with a 91.9 PFF grade. Juwan Briggs above 91. Myles Garrett with a high grade. Mike Hall with a really nice grade today, as well as his first NFL sack, a tackle for a loss, a QB hit, and 3 solo tackles. He was all over the place. So those guys, the younger guys there on the defense, Briggs and Hall, of course, Hicks, Delpit, and McGuire all had good scores today as well. So, I mean, you're talking about a nice young core there of guys that are all playing well on the defense, too, as you can look at as a bright spot on that side of the ball. The struggling side of the defense today, Diabate, not good. Harden, Mitchell, and Emerson continuing to struggle a little bit.
It's always hard for me to really know with DB grades.
Yep.
Because, I think
I would say my eyes told me Emerson continued to struggle.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good tackler, but it's certainly frustrating to watch some of the stuff he's still dealing with. It was interesting that they chose they were content to play sides at corner. They did not play straight matchups. So you saw Ward cover. He's the guy who made the tackle on the play where Higgins got hurt. You saw Emerson covering Chase at points. You saw Cameron Mitchell covering Chase at points. That is clearly the position that outside of Ward, they've got to get squared away. I would like to believe that we're going to see Emerson bounce back. Part of the reason I cite believing Emerson is going to bounce back is because I just look at corners all over the league. I'll just look at this division. Joey Porter Jr. was much better last year than he has been this year. And what's his face? Cam Tyler-Britt was way better last year, where people thought he was going to be poised to make a big breakout season, just like Martin Emerson was just like Martin Emerson. And both of them have sort of taken a step back and had their share of issues. So, they've got a lot of young players. They're probably going to keep adding to that room, as they should. I mean, it's just one of those positions you always want to keep adding. But I think, again, if you can, even though you can look at the PFF grades, and let's take them at face value that they are like that in terms of the DBs. It's the front can just cover up so many of the warts. And even when they were historically great in 2023, that is some of what was happening. Yes. So that is also another reason where you can do that. But yes, they've got to continue to get better at that. But yeah, I mean, with Ward and Delpit, you've got two really good players. They've just got to keep working and finessing and trying to find the right combination of guys to figure out that room, that group on game day, and just make that group better. But here again, there are issues that I think JOK would help with, another explosive pass rusher, those type of things. But even with all that, results being what they were, 24 points. The one was the last pass touchdown. They gave up the 17 early. Again, another situation where they give up a score on a short field. I still felt positive, especially after the first half. First half was not great. I really felt good about the second half. And it's another game where the offense continued to give them nothing, and the defense just kept fighting. And they keep playing like a group that is desperately trying to prove themselves. And Juwan Briggs is a really interesting story, just from the standpoint of being a guy who was a 7th-round pick, was cut, has been on the practice squad, and has played the last 4 weeks. Again, based on PFF grades anyway, struggled against the Broncos, and then every game has gotten better. In sort of, I think, about 17 to 20 snaps at a time, and just being interesting as a potential backup defensive lineman next year could be useful. I'm not suggesting that I suspect he doesn't think he's guaranteed himself anything other than an opportunity. But if you can get Mike Hall, Juwan Briggs, and Isaiah McGuire all to be, players to contribute next year, and Mike Hall and Isaiah McGuire are doing that. Juwan Briggs would be adding to that. Then you're also going to get Alex Wright back. That's a lot of young football players, which is what you want for that group. You want that D-line to be all young players, which is the thing that the Browns have struggled with for a while. And suddenly Myles Garrett who's will turn 29 in a week. He's still got plenty of football ahead of him. Suddenly has those components on the line with him, with Dalvin Tomlinson, with Shelby Harris, who are both under contract for next year. That feels really good about that unit. And that can carry over and take care of a lot of the issues in the back end, even as they try to continue to get better at that. And that's going to be one of the big focuses for this offseason. How are they going to fix the back? If you're on defense, it's going to be getting more pass rush. It's not Myles Garrett, and it's going to be fixing the back end. And that's it for the most part. So I think that still gives you a strong place to go. They're not that far off to me.
Yeah. Some good stuff there, for sure. On the offensive side of the ball, real quickly, we already mentioned Ford and Njoku, but the other two guys that graded out well today were Conklin and Pochich.
Yeah, so there are certainly the one where Jermaine Ifedi just got smoked was not good. Again, there are plays where I felt like the offensive line was not helpful, but it really felt so much to me like Deshaun Watson playing quarterback, where there are times when the offensive line doesn't look very good, and I'm assuming a lot of those times the ball's supposed to be out. In fact, the sack that Trey Hendrickson smoked Jermaine Ifedi on, I'm assuming the ball is supposed to be out on that play when he took that sack. Now, credit Trey Hendrickson, made a great play, but there are just plays where I think the ball was supposed to be out. DTR held on to it or ran around and did things he shouldn't do, which is what we saw from Deshaun too much. And they took sacks. And I think they posted at some point the Browns had given up the most sacks in the league. I would put overwhelming majority of those on the quarterback position. They've just got to get that better. And if that's Kirk Cousins, if that's another veteran that's going to be out there next year, that's got to be a huge key for them. In addition to the fact that I just hope they get better on the offensive line and get better at doing things like running the ball consistently so they can put teams in more force teams to think more, force teams to be honest to those situations more, make the play action more viable, do all those things. But at the end of the day, the ball's still got to come out, and you cannot keep making negative plays. Because you take a sack on first or second down, you have now doomed the rest of the drive into something that is the Browns don't want to be in. Or, in this case, part of the reason I'm not interested in seeing DTR really is because even when they were in like 2nd and 18, they were running read with him keeping the football. And it worked. It worked. That's the problem is they gained yardage and got called back on a holding penalty, but that does nothing about that suggests confidence to me in what he can do. I mean, the result is ultimately more important, getting the yardage. But if you're telling me if the goal here is again, and this is the thing that we sort of have to understand, if the goal is to win football games or if the goal is to win football games, any means necessary, so be it. If the goal is to also develop DTR, I don't think that helps DTR.
Basically what one of the things that I had an issue with, and you kind of mentioned it there with the read stuff. I don't know. The offense didn't look recognizable in certain ways to the way that it did when Jameis was in there. And that may just be DTR's flaws or his inexperience, but it seemed like they called a different game for him. And at some point that's a little bit counterproductive, is it not?
Well, yes, but also you got to keep in mind that I do think some of that's on DTR not having his eyes in the right places at points or not getting the ball out fast enough and that type of stuff. But it's also DTR is picking the plays he wants to run. And if DTR is picking, Jameis is clearly picking plays that are more aggressive down the field and some other things, he wants to push it. DTR really, some of this was just him, but if it's the play calls or whatever he's sort of picking out for himself, they barely ever challenged down the field, or if they did, it felt desperate. And that is ultimately, to me, I think that's on him most of all. There were some issues where I felt like in the pocket, he was short on some throws. I felt like the pocket was being pushed, so he couldn't step up into his throws a little bit. But even so, like that's the sort of how they run their offense. They empower their quarterback to have a big say because they don't want to call plays that the quarterback's not comfortable running, which I completely understand. And if DTR is limiting himself from that standpoint, so be it. But I suspect if we get the all 22 out, it's going to be like it always is, where we're going to sit there and go open receiver. I know there were a couple times where they posted like, they showed a replay where Jerry Judy's squaring in and open and the eyes weren't there or whatever. That's where I felt like the game was moving too fast for DTR, or he was going through his first read and then basically immediately getting into bad habits of dropping his eyes and some of the other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't get into bad habits in 2025. Go to corehomefitness.com. Get into the good habits, all the good stuff that you can do for your body and yourself as you make your 2025 resolution to become a more fit and better person as far as your health goes. We have introduced the sponsor, Core Home Fitness, to you. Go check out corehomefitness.com and their assortment of lifting equipment, especially their top-rated adjustable dumbbells by New York Times and Men's Health. They're also rated a Best Buy by Consumer Reports. Check out their videos and other products like the Glute Drive Plus and the Fight Master and crush your goals in 2025. They've got these benches there that incline bench, flat bench. You can everything you need to set up your home gym at corehomefitness.com and get yourself looking right for 2025 as you make your your New Year's resolution to maybe lose a few pounds or get fit. One way or the other. Plus, they make a great gift for family members and friends. Again, check out corehomefitness.com for the ultimate in home fitness equipment. They have stepped up to be our sponsor at the OBR. They have a U.S.-based support team, fast shipping, hassle-free returns, you name it. They know what they're doing. Again, corehomefitness.com. All right. I wanted to bring this up with you. As we mentioned, Myles, and you wrote on this as well. But Myles' comments this week, as he talked about not wanting a rebuild, he got very specific about the quarterback position, as good as, wrote off Watson for good in his comments as well, as add that to the messaging that the team is sending out there. But, I have been seeing this, that they're not going to rebuild. The plan was never to rebuild. It's more of a pivot or on the move, try to retool this thing. But he has made it very clear what he wants. And he wants to compete. And if he doesn't see a plan to do that, he made it seem like, he would go someplace or would consider going someplace else. Now, he was very clear that he wants to finish his career in a Browns uniform. But where are you at with all your takeaways from this? It was a conversation. I'm glad he said what he said. I feel like it was a good thing. A lot of people are looking at it like a negative, but I feel like it was good that he said those things.
To me, it's not a very big deal. It's notable that he made the comments because he's never talked, even addressed the possibility of playing anywhere else. Right. But it's not a big deal because he wants the same thing that the Browns want. The Browns aren't going to blow it up. Like, this is a conversation that's not real. People keep suggesting they want the team to blow it up. Jack Duffin has laid out in extraordinary detail that that's not possible unless you're content not to compete in either 2026 or 2027, that you're just giving up on 2 years. That's what blowing it up costs. The Browns aren't going to do that. They don't have to either. So that part is easily addressed. They're going to compete and try to win. The other parts that are interesting is he seemed to be worried that, and they're all connected. I think he's worried that they're going to start cutting guys that are older and expensive. I don't think he wants to see Dalvin Tomlinson leave. I don't think he wants to see those type of guys leave. I don't think the Browns are interested in letting them leave either. Yeah. So this came up in a conversation, which I think the context is super important. He was asked, what's going on with the season? What's wrong with it? This, that, and the other. And he sort of lays out these things. And then Mary Kay Cabot gets into an exchange with him where he basically she says, is there a world where you could see yourself not wanting to be a Cleveland Brown or whatever? And basically said, well, I don't want to blow it up. I don't want to start over. Okay. And then he talks about that stuff. And then she comes back and then he goes, I want to see a plan. He talks about wanting to see a plan. Well, so does everybody who's watching this right now. Everybody wants to see a plan. I want to see a plan. You want to see a plan.
Yeah.
So that part is completely understandable. And he's saying we should be winning. Well, you know who else thinks they should be winning and needs them to be winning? Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. So again, they're all on the same page with that. So that stuff is not a very big deal. But then she comes back and goes, well, what if they don't agree with your plan? Is there a possibility at that point?
Yeah.
And both times he answers this question, he leads with, I still want to be a Cleveland Brown. Like, this is the part that gets lost, and everybody just jumps to the conclusion, oh, he's gone. And they says, if they're basically not on the same plan for me, then okay, then there's a possibility I might want out. Like, you've taken it to an extreme ends to get the answer that you want, the story, I suppose. And it's not that makes it irrelevant, but it took to get to the point of the Browns are blowing it up and have no plan or whatever that you're satisfied with. And at that point, it might be possible.
Yeah.
That's not exactly like, I want out, get me out. That's largely where everyone wants to be in this scenario. Now, and then she asked about the quarterback, or talked about the plan and the quarterback position. I don't know if this was still her or not, but just in general, this was asked.
It was.
And then he referred to the quarterback and the plan at quarterback and all this stuff, to which I and most anyone with a functioning brain immediately realized the fact that he did not say Deshaun Watson's our quarterback and we're going to rally around Deshaun Watson, he's going to play good football and we're winning games, means he knows like everybody else does, it's over. He actually
said DTR.
So, yeah, well, he said, used as an example, whether it's DTR or whoever. But, yeah.
He was using its example,
Watson's name never came up with. So then after the postgame today, Mary Kay goes and asks him, was this a shot at Deshaun Watson? Which, of course, he said no. But, again, you have a functioning brain. You realize the mere fact that he did not come out strongly and say, Deshaun Watson's our quarterback and he's going to lead us to wins and all this other stuff. He went with the super PC answer of just being like, I love Deshaun as a team human, whatever. But everybody knows what the answer is to this. I don't know why we're going to pretend that he cared. If there's a miraculous transformation that Deshaun Watson can go under, where he's going to suddenly, his Achilles is just going to regrow and be super strong. And then he's going to become a good quarterback, which has shown nothing to this point of ever being relative to the Cleveland Browns, then okay, we'll leave that 0.1%, if even that high,
sliver,
that it could be possible. But other than that, part of the plan he wants explained is, what are we doing at quarterback to get this thing fixed? And I know it's not him. So what is it? So yes, if you leave all of these things out and do all these things Myles does not want, at that point, he will then consider not wanting to be a Cleveland Brown. Cool. That's not a huge deal. Again, it's noteworthy. It's noteworthy specifically from the fact that he has never even addressed this, but you had to pull back layer after layer after layer to come up with a scenario where he does not want to be here. And he still leads with, I still want to be here. So that's all really interesting. And then the other part, the whole reason, I think this conversation by Myles Garrett warrants being had anyway.
Yes.
But this offseason, the Browns are likely going to try to sign him to a contract extension. That's the reason he wants to have, obviously the 3-12 record warrants that anyway. But part of the reason he wants to have these conversations is because he wants to sign a new deal. And if he feels good about the plan, he's going to sign a new contract and feel very good about it and move on. Now, ultimately, when Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski and Myles Garrett, who all have the exact same interest of winning football games, get together and they figure this thing out, I suspect I'm very confident Myles Garrett is going to sign a lucrative extension to stay with the Cleveland Browns, and that they're going to try to get this thing sorted out. And that's how this thing's going to end up going. So, again, it's notable from the standpoint of him saying it, but I've seen he's a great thing to write about in these terms, but like losing this game today means, oh, the Browns are heading the wrong direction. It's going to make Myles want to leave more. I think Myles is smart enough to realize the season is over. I think Myles knows they can't turn it around and make the playoffs this year. So yeah, losing sucks. And nothing about this is fun, but I think he is well aware of what this season is at this point. And it really comes down to how interested is he in seeing the things that we're talking about? How interested is he seeing what Isaiah McGuire is doing, Mike Hall is doing, Jawan Briggs is doing? Because he's going to have those guys in the room potentially next year. The more interest he has in those guys, the better. So if those guys are playing well, it's only going to help these things. If the Browns are going to tell him, hey, listen, we're picking currently 4th. What do you think about this kid at Penn State? He's like, I really like him. Yeah, we do too. We're going to see if he's a good fit. These are all things that are going to get him interested. Now, we can get into what is his timeline and all that stuff, but that's all theoretical. All he's worried about is getting right back on track and getting right in terms of where this thing's going. And I think the biggest issue for him is just the simplest one. He doesn't want to blow it up. The Browns aren't going to blow it up. So most of this is already solved. It just comes down to getting on the same page with how they get back to winning. I just don't see a scenario where suddenly, we're going to get to a thing. Because if for no other reason, Andrew Berry is not going to trade him. He's just not. He's not stupid. It would take a very unhappy Myles Garrett to eventually get traded. And I don't think we're anywhere near that. And part of that is because Myles is going to want that contract. And the second he gets that contract, it's going to make him harder to move. And then the other part is going to be that even if the Browns were to give him permission to go seek a trade, they're never going to get enough. There's no trade that they're ever going to be able to replace him. He's not old. He's never really been hurt. He's the type of athlete, the type of human being, the genetic freak that can endure well into his 30s. It's not a guy who's had multiple ACL injuries or any ACL injuries or any major injuries that's required surgery. Literally, he's dealing with the worst injury of his career right now, and it's related to a thing happened to him at birth. So, and he's still great, and he's still outstanding. He's still crushing it. So I'm not worried about that stuff. It will. I think a lot of this stuff will take care of itself. But if, to your point, saying this is a positive, well, Myles Garrett is a 6'4", 280-pound voice of the fan in this scenario where he's saying what everybody else is thinking. Well, the Browns should not be this bad. They should not be 3-12. How do we fix it? And how do we fix it in a way that's going to be? How do we fix it now?
Efficiently,
3 years from now. Like,
yeah,
that is everyone USA is sitting here that's interested in the Browns is saying the same thing. So yes, it's notable. They're going to have those conversations, and this, may already be having them. Hell, put them in on Hard Knocks. Can we have this conversation on Hard Knocks? I'd be really interested. Now, again, that would be great. But the second the season's over, I think those conversations are going to be happening in more proper context, and then we're going to see what happens. But it's news by virtue of the fact that it's Myles Garrett saying this. But if you're wanting to ask me what is a bigger deal, what Myles Garrett is saying in Cleveland versus what Joe Burrow is saying in Cincinnati, Joe Burrow in Cincinnati is a way bigger deal. Joe Burrow saying that T. Higgins is a need is a way bigger deal. Joe Burrow expressed his displeasure about the money in Cincinnati is a much bigger deal. So this is something that can easily get sorted out. Whereas no one is saying, well, Joe Burrow wants to be traded from the Cincinnati Bengals, even though his issue is going to be much harder to deal with for the Bengals than what the Browns are dealing with.
Yeah. And, the reason I said it's a positive thing is because I think, like I already said, that's what they were doing already. They're not blowing it up. And despite, even though you said, it sounds like he's the voice of the fan here, you would be surprised. And even our chat right now, blow this MFer up. This needs blown up. This whole thing needs redone. All these people that want to blow it up for no reason, I have no idea. We forget so quickly that they won 11 games last year. They act like it's been 3-win seasons for, consecutive year after year after year after year. And that it can't be turned around in 1 year as quickly as it went bad in 1 year is wild beyond belief to me. But certainly Myles would know best. So if you give him a plan and he feels that they can turn it around and he does agree with it, of course he wants more than 6 points. But that's no, not since '99, no. But since this regime has been here, they've been in the playoffs twice. 3 years they did not, but they were close to 500. This is the first real bad season they've had since these guys have been here, and I would contest that he realizes that they are close enough to not blow it up, and he doesn't want to sit there while they do blow it up and waste the years of his career, which I think is a valid point to make. I wouldn't want to either. He doesn't want the Joe Thomas thing all over.
Which, by the way, people forget this. Joe Thomas said the same thing at the end of near the end of his career, where he got really tired of firing coaches. He said, "Please stop firing coaches. I'm tired of starting over every year." Yeah, just because Joe Thomas is a team guy and the sort of the happy warrior, he said these things himself. And then when the opportunity arose to go to Denver, he said no. I think that's ultimately, and obviously the Browns are nowhere near that in terms of what they were with Joe Thomas, where the Browns were legitimately not going in a good place and ultimately went into the tank after that, where they could have traded Joe Thomas, but for a first-round pick with the Broncos. But if you actually watch Myles Garrett talk, he is nowhere near as exercised as people think he is. And that's because they don't care what Myles is actually saying. They want to use him as a way to be mad at the franchise and are trying to make him into their vehicle to do that, when he does not feel the same way as you do. I promise you he does not. Be mad and say Myles Garrett, is just trying to get out. He's not. And he can't make this any clearer. The guy is going to be in Cleveland all offseason. Well, at least a lot of the offseason. He was so angry at the Browns, so pissed, that after he gave that press conference, he went and watched the Cavs destroy somebody else. He's not nearly as outraged as you are. That doesn't mean he's not competitive. That doesn't mean he doesn't care. He does care, clearly, or he wouldn't have said it. But he's not this full of rage that you think that he's interested in blowing up the organization. He said specifically not to do that. So get out of here with that crap. It makes no sense. And like I said, and beyond that, he was literally asked about this in the press conference. He said he trusts Kevin Stefanski and said he used Dustin Hopkins as an example of why players trust him and why they should trust him. This is the leader of the football team who people say want to blow up the team and want to be traded, saying, I trust Kevin Stefanski. He has no upside. He doesn't have to say that, but he goes out of his way to speak up for these people. So again, there are people who are going to keep doing this, and it's not going to go away. There are people who are going to yell at the Browns, think they're doing it for the sake of through the sake of Myles Garrett and his argument, and they're not. And they're going to, as I said, they're going to trudge ahead. We've been covering this the entire year. To me, I think more than anything, I think some of this is aimed at fans and media who keep pushing this idea of blowing it up. Because nowhere have the Browns suggested this at all. The only people who have been suggesting this are fans and media. So him saying, I don't want to blow it up, in part is a message to the people who keep advocating to blow it up. So we'll see what happens. But I would say get ready for Myles Garrett to sign another contract extension, because that's the most logical outcome for this to happen.
Yeah, he will sign an extension.
Pete, you loved and were happy when they ditched Baker and signed Watson back then. That is absolutely not what happened. I can pull up dozens of articles crushing the Browns for getting involved with the Deshaun Watson business over and over and over again. I have the receipts. Not only have the receipts of that, I have the receipts of the people who did push for this thing. So you can get out of here with that crap. I absolutely hated the Deshaun Watson thing from every single side of it. And I argued that the Browns should actually keep Baker on the 5th-year option and play it out. But having said that, knowing what I know now, it probably still wasn't going to work out with Baker Mayfield. The only thing I've ever said with Deshaun Watson in terms of trying to defend the team it is to say that if you were trying to make the shortest path from Baker Mayfield to trying to compete again, it was through a veteran quarterback and through Deshaun Watson. That's the only thing I've ever said that you can make the argument for. And why do I support this front office? I keep saying this. If the Browns were to fire Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson and say it's because, or I should say, fire Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry because of Deshaun Watson, I would say it's totally justified. They aren't going to do that. So if we're not arguing on this plane of existence where that's a consideration, then I'm going to look at everything else they do, and everything else they do is pretty good, and everything else they do is grounded in reasonable ways of operating, things that are producing results. So no, you mischaracterizing what I'm talking about is not going to get you anywhere, and it's horribly wrong. I do think Andrew Berry is a good GM. I do think Kevin Stefanski is a good head coach. And I hate that they made this move, and it's going to be a stain that stays with them forever, deservedly. But ultimately, the important question, and I continue to ask this for everyone, is knowing what you know, that that Jimmy Haslam is not going to fire them for Deshaun Watson. What is the best path forward? The best path forward is with Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, and it's not even close. The mystery box is not getting you out of this mess. You are going to get crappier and crappier candidates and go back to the Freddie Kitchens of the world, or who else am I missing? Any number of crappy head coaches, Pat Shurmur, those type of guys. And like, this is the only head coaching hire that this ownership group has gotten right, including in the NBA, where the now part owner of the Milwaukee Bucks, at least reportedly, pushed for them to hire Doc Rivers. So no. Also, I like Ken Dorsey as well, for the people who keep trying to fire. I don't know why people keep wanting to get rid of Ken Dorsey either. I actually think he's done a really good job, and we're starting to see them turn the corner a little bit on the run game. I think, obviously, I keep pushing this. Brad and I both keep talking about this. They've got to be able to run the ball better, and that's got to be a huge, huge element, both in terms of the offensive line and just getting more talent at that position. But even as I say that, Jerome Ford keeps springing 66 or 60-plus yard runs. That is something that they weren't doing at the beginning of the year. They are showing improvement in certain areas on offense. And I like how Ken Dorsey keeps getting guys like Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, David Njoku, and Cedric Tillman, when healthy, opportunities to make plays. And he's aggressive, and he does a lot of the things I like. And I like the fact that you take what he does well and you're marrying it with what Kevin Stefanski does well, and you're getting sort of this sort of mixed marriage offense, which I actually really like. I've talked about this before on the React and other places. There is an inclination for people to want to just get all these guys who do the exact same thing. And I understand it. And there's certainly a world where that would make all the sense in the world and could be an iron sharpens iron sort of thing. But Kevin Stefanski has been doing this Kubiak thing for forever. So I liked the opportunity to get him a bunch of different offensive minds who have done different things. Ken Dorsey, Deuce Staley, the Andy Dickerson, Roy Ishtvan, the running game coordinator who's from UConn, who's named Nick Charlton. I want guys like that who are talented young coaches. Tommy Rees, who now colleges are trying to hire out of here because the Browns have talented coaches. I want them to sort of challenge Kevin Stefanski in a way that I think is going to bring out the best of both of them. And I think we're starting to see that. It's just tough when, the quarterback is so dysfunctional as Deshaun Watson was, DTR currently is, and we saw with Jameis Winston what it could be. If you do better than those and you fix those other things, I think the Browns can be really good on offense, and you can get back to getting back to being a playoff team, getting back to being competitive, all those things. So, yeah, I think that's the best path forward.
My problem with the surrounding cast is it's not that I have a problem with them. It's just that I don't know if they'll fit with whatever direction. We don't know who the quarterback is going to be in 2025.
Correct.
So once you do know who that is, like hypothetically, if it is Kirk Cousins, just throwing it out there, does it make sense to keep Dorsey?
That assumes Dorsey can only function in one way.
I'm not saying that. Maybe he can function in another way, but wouldn't it make sense for him to lean back into what he knows so well? Part of his failure is that they've only used him in play action, 20th in play action in Atlanta this year. Like they're not using him in a way, the way that Stefanski did and the Kubiak system did.
Yes. Well, part of that I blame on the Achilles because he can't move. So he can't do things like stretch. You know what I mean? So a lot of his play action would literally be drop back. And that doesn't really help them because he can't move. So it's literally just dropping him back and setting the target a little deeper. I think he's got to do a lot to improve his mobility, if that's possible. Or you end up in a world where you've got to go around that. So no, I don't think you have to get rid of Dorsey to do that. But does that theoretically mean could that mean leaning into more of the things that Kevin Stefanski been comfortable with? Sure, because that's probably where Kirk Cousins is going to find his comfort zone. But I would still believe that there's still benefit to getting things that Ken Dorsey has done well, specifically as it pertains to things like Jerry Jeudy and those type of things. So again, I think an effective marriage of philosophies is still going to be the best way to go. I know they have an extremely good working relationship between Kevin Stefanski and Ken Dorsey. They really like the setup they have, so I don't expect it to go anywhere. And look, if they come to part of this is going to ultimately be determined, do they think Kirk Cousins is a good fit given where he is in his career? Now, at $1.25 million, if that's what it ends up being, I think they'll figure it out. But that stuff I don't worry about. I think you can always cater the offense to the strength of the player you're going to have. But so much of that comes down to what are you going to be able to do to run the ball? What are you going to be able to do to take pressure off the quarterback? What are you going to be able to create those shots? And again, we'll see what happens. I've been pleasantly surprised with Ken Dorsey. Is he perfect? No. But again, I feel like the setup they have brings out more of the good things in Kevin Stefanski, and in addition to toning down some of the things that were negative seemingly about Ken Dorsey. The one thing I have a problem with the criticism of Ken Dorsey is when people blame interceptions on Ken Dorsey. Unless Ken Dorsey is yelling at the quarterback to throw into coverage, we consistently see guys open and the quarterback just throwing to the wrong place. So that part doesn't concern me. The other thing I think that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, and I'll be interested to see if that continues into both the remaining two games and then into next season, we're starting to see more life in the screen game. They've gotten a couple teams off balance with well-timed screens, and part of that's because the pressure's been so effective getting in there. But with DTR this week, Jameis last week, on a couple of times, the Browns have been able to get those dump-off screens working really well. So in terms of the whole evaluation mode that they're in, there are some things that I think they can hopefully carry over into next year. That would be one of them. But so much of this starts with Jimmy's and Joe's and quarterback and the offensive line and those type of things. But like I said, I feel good about the coaching staff. If Kevin Stefanski feels he needs to make a change, so be it. Ultimately, it's his call. But I don't sit here and go, man, they need to fire Coach X.
Yeah. I guess you don't have to get rid of him. But my concern lies with what we've both talked about it, and that's just their inability to run the football. And I know that a lot has to do with the Jimmys and Joes, to your point, and personnel. But they have had no answers for running the football, really.
Basically their plan at running game right now is hope Jerome Ford takes off on one of them. And some of that is the Browns have done a pretty good job in terms of getting the receivers to block and some of the other things that are going well. Again, I do genuinely think the Browns are getting better at running the ball as we get further into the season. Now, some of that is the Bengals aren't a very good run defense. They got the big run last week against the Chiefs, which was they just ripped off a good play. And I think the Chiefs were more worried about Jameis throwing it, which sort of gave that opportunity. But then receiver blocking is what sort of carried that, and Jerome Ford just being fast. But if that's the case, so be it. Find ways to use those things to your advantage. But I would like to see them get more consistent. I would like to see Nick Chubb come back healthy and look more like Nick Chubb. I would like them to get another running back in the draft. I think there are going to be a ton of them. I can run off like 10 guys I would love on this team. Mm-hmm. But first and foremost, I want them to get better up front. I want them to block well. I don't want to have to rely on Jermaine Ifedi. It's miserable.
Yeah. that is miserable, and they absolutely need more weapons in the backfield and blocking for the backfield. That is 100% the first step to, no matter who the quarterback is making the position easier to play by adding a run game. 100%. I wonder how much the quarterback himself will affect the direction of the staff, and if at all.
Yeah, that's interesting. I suppose you could not technically legally get sort of a good hint of where you're going with that before March, and before you'd have to get like January to get a sense of where you're going to make that decision. But I suppose that's possible. But I think ultimately the staff will be in place long before that final decision is made, because there are enough variables out there that are going to make things weird. The better Sam Darnold plays, the more out of range he's going to be, and the more it's going to be a conversation as to whether the Vikings are just going to say, screw it, we're going to keep him, and it's going to keep both quarterbacks, and you guys can all suck it. And right now, if you're the Raiders, Antonio Pierce just seemingly gave your whole franchise a giant middle finger by taking your team from the first pick in the draft to the fifth pick in the draft by beating the Jags. And now you might be left holding the bag in terms of the quarterback options at the top of the draft, where everybody in Las Vegas, you saw people in the stadium holding up Shador signs, and that may be over with. So the moving parts are tough to we don't have a firm draft order at this point, which is going to change things. But it's genuinely insane what could happen. Now the Browns are suddenly picking fourth ahead of the Raiders. Now, is there a world where, let's get way out there. Let's say somehow, some way the Titans were to sign Sam Darnold before the draft. Suddenly they don't need a quarterback anymore. Are they going to trade down to the Raiders, or are the Browns going to trade down to the Raiders? Like, there's a whole lot of weird. That doesn't matter. That's where I'm at. And I don't care who you sign. If there's even in a world where they sign Sam Darnold, I'm still operating. I need to improve the rest of the team enough where I'm not depending on Sam Darnold to carry the football team. And they even mentioned in the broadcast, like today, not for the Vikings, with the Browns, like, you cannot have DTR throw the ball 40 times. And I'm sitting there going, no, you cannot. Just like we said with James Winston, you can't have him throwing 40, 50 times. You can't have Bailey Zappi throwing 40, 50 times. I don't care if it's Kirk Cousins. I don't care if it's Sam Darnold. I don't care if it's any of these guys. I don't want them throwing 40 or 50 times. I want them to be able to do the other things, play good defense, run the ball, and then have the quarterback be great. As the question is about tanking.
At this point, Pete, I'm inclined to kind of lean the other way. Like, I get where a point where winning had value, but like, you don't carry momentum from one season to another.
No. So it just entirely depends on what's important to you. I want them to feel good about coming out of the season and not just leaving the season like they all want to die. And I'm reasonably confident they're not going to have that anyway. Just watching them play,
they're going to lose, right? Yeah.
But if they play DTR next week, I fully expect them to lose. So they've sort of seemingly, unless he comes out miraculously better, and getting to see this up close and all this was the thing that's going to set him forward. It's hard for me to believe they're going to lose. Now, is it going to hurt? Is it going to hurt my feelings that the Browns end up 3-14 and have a higher draft pick? No. But the thing I'm always going to focus on is I want ultimately what is going to help this team be in the best position possible for next year. Abdul Carter, to me, would be great if that's on the table. But it's invalidated a little bit if we've got a whole bunch of players who are either really unhappy or don't want to be here, or it hurts the team's perception for free agents or all these other things, contract extensions, so on and so forth, because they went 3-14 as opposed to 5-12. You know what I mean? So I'm happy to have the higher draft pick, but ultimately I'm way more focused on what is right with the team. And even and this is sort of the thing, like, no one wants to hear this argument. by and large. But like, if I look at the teams who are down, like in the dregs right now, I think the Browns are infinitely better than most of those teams in terms of how they feel about themselves and the talent they have going forward, like with young talent and all these other things. But the places they've gotten killed, obviously quarterback being number one, and some of the other injury issues. I mean, they're second in the league on guys on IR. Those things are going to kill your team. So much of this is about getting healthy, but I do feel like they're in a much better position to come back and compete next year than a lot of these teams. They could easily, in the same way they can go potentially -8 wins from last year. I think they could easily go +5, 6 next year, simply by doing the things they did well last year and then adding to it. Having a functional kicker. Dustin Hopkins got to get sorted out. He's got to have a whole offseason to get figured out. Whatever you got to do to get that squared away. If they play defense they don't even have to play the historic level of defense, but just consistently good defense. If they can run the ball, which is something they have not done in 2 years, even when they went 11-6, they could not run the football. And then Kevin Stefanski and the coaching staff are able to do what they have done and get the quarterback to play just a little bit better than we expect, then I think they can ultimately win football games and be a competitive team. There's a lot of other things that we can see them clean up, turnovers, obviously. But I don't think it's unrealistic for the Browns to be back in contention. I think the biggest thing that hurts the Browns ultimately is the fact that they play in the AFC North. I talk about charity reps. There are 2 charity divisions in the NFL this year and most years. The NFC South, both South divisions, AFC and NFC South, are charity divisions. The Browns, unfortunately, play in the most brutal division, arguably, in the NFL. Up there with both Northern division teams are brutal. That is the biggest thing that hurts them more than they've got to really capitalize on their out of division schedule. They've got to somehow find a way to go 3-3. Fortunately, Kevin Stefanski's largely been pretty effective in the division. That would be a big deal. But we'll see what happens. I feel good about a lot of things that are in place, but obviously it's all weighed down by one stupid decision, which was not realistic ever. And they're going to continue to pay the price for that until they luck out. And Kirk Cousins, to me, is a life preserver of sorts from the Falcons if they cut him, and you are able to balance out your cap a little bit at the quarterback position because you get a quarterback at the minimum, and he's able to give you a little bit closer to what he showed in 2023 in Minnesota before the injury. I highly recommend anyone to watch it. If you watch Kurt Warner's breakdown of Kirk Cousins, yes, Kirk Cousins is doing a lot of things that's not helping himself, and there are issues where he lacked confidence. And I got a little bit of Baker Mayfield vibes at the end of 2022 when people pronounced him completely broken and unusable. Yeah. But the offense is also doing him no favors in a lot of these places. And I think Kevin Stefanski's better at that. So those are reasons I think it can work. But they've got to figure it out. Whether it's Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, or somewhere in between, they've got to figure it out.
Or draft pick. We'll see. The options are limited. They're not the best options in the world. However, you can find a way. I mean, you won 11 games with worse options last year. So you just need to find it. I want them to be able to put a functionable offense out there. And so far this year, they just haven't been able to sustain any kind of functionality on offense for more than 2 games in a row. And that scares me. I know that the quarterback play is a massive part of that. But the options aren't that much better, which is why I think it's so important that they focus on the run game. The run game has to be, you have to be able to win games by running the football next year, or else you don't have a chance. You have to make playing quarterback easy on the Browns.
That should be the whole focus. Make quarterback playing easy, because ultimately you're going to want to draft a guy. Unless you get Sam Darnold, which Possible, but I don't put the chances of being very high. You're going to want to draft your own guy. And to do that and to do that well, you're going to have to accomplish that anyway. So make the quarterback position, or make this offense as quarterback friendly, make this team as quarterback friendly as possible, and then add that piece and ultimately elevate them above perhaps what others might have thought they could achieve, as opposed to trying to do it the other way around, where you get as bad as possible and then pick the quarterback and try to solve it from there. Build the team up first, then get your guy.
Yep. Agreed. All right. We've gone way over here on the OBR post-game show. Much to discuss. Thank you guys all for being here and commenting. You're all very passionate, and I respect all your opinions. So thank you for dropping them in the chat. Make sure you hit like and subscribe on your way in and out. We will have a odd schedule this week for shows with the holidays and everything. So, keep it locked. I'll post it on social media as well, the abbreviated schedule, as we're working all that out, working through that with Christmas and everything. And then New Year's the week after. So, any parting words tonight, Pete, before we get out of here?
Subscribe to the newsletter. That's always good. The podcast. There's going to be some interesting stuff coming in the new year that we're excited about. And then as the Browns continue to fall down the standings, the draft coverage will pick it up. More offensive line analysis is coming. More looking at the prospects that are going to be as we keep seeing the playoff continue. A lot of interesting prospects on there, some of which we've already talked about. So the coverage is going to continue on that front. We're going to get you prepped for the offseason and everything, especially at the quarterback position. That's going to be the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to have it all covered, every single angle that you can imagine, over at the OBR.com. Links are all in the description below for the newsletter, for the website, 50% off VIP membership, the best Browns community in the world. The Orange and Brown Report post-game show. Appreciate you all being here. Have a wonderful Christmas. Enjoy the holiday. Appreciate all of you and your dedication to the show and showing up every night. The regulars, you guys are great, and we appreciate you. So thank you so much. But keep it locked as we'll get you through this, get into the off season, and hash all this stuff out for you. For Pete Smith, always fantastic. Great job, Pete. And my name is Brad Ward. Keep it locked at the OBR, and Merry Christmas. We are out.